And we are live streaming right now on YouTube. I'm the host of the most, Aaron Cass. I have here former assistant head coach, Stratford High School Red Devils. His brother kicked him out, but that's okay because he found a new school at Staples High School, new wrestling coach. One of the coaches at Southside Wrestling Club in Bridgeport. As you can see right here, is two-time high school All-State, two-time high school conference tourney finalist, one-time high school conference champion, compiled 100 wins. Went to Sacred Heart University in wrestling. I couldn't find the stats on that, so probably after this, you could tell me how many wins you got, unless you didn't get any. That's okay.
No,
Former commissioner of the fantasy football league that we were in. We got colluded out by his brother again. We're still fighting those collusion charges. We got the new Staples High School wrestling coach, Jordan Miron. What's going on, man?
Nothing much. How are you, Aaron?
I'm doing all right. I wanted you on here because I saw you were the new coach. I'm like, you know what? We haven't done any wrestling episodes, and this is real wrestling. This isn't wrestling, WWE.
Yeah.
This is like almost close to the MMA. So
yeah,
I definitely had to get you on.
Yeah, there is a big difference, and I'll be honest. There was no youth wrestling for me growing up, and so when I first got introduced to wrestling, I thought I was going to be doing stuff like the WWE. I showed up the first day. I was like, what the hell is going on here? But, I developed a love for it, and it taught me a lot of things about life and a lot of lessons that I think have made me successful in some areas of my life. And so, I really developed a deep appreciation for the sport, and that's why I continue to do it.
So, I mean, you grew up in Bridgeport, obviously went to Stratford High. So if anybody that's watching this has been in Stratford or anything like that, we're mostly known for like basketball and football. So what made you want to do wrestling out of any of those sports at Stratford High?
Yeah, so I was playing football for Stratford in my freshman year, and Coach Cavalier, who was the wrestling coach at the time, was the freshman football coach, and he was kind of pushing everybody, especially the linemen and linebackers, towards wrestling. And a lot of our really good wrestlers came from that freshman football team. If no one probably remembers the name, but very good friend of mine, Anthony Ricco, who was probably the we had one other state champ. So we had two state champs that won states when I was in high school, and they were Anthony was one of them, and the other one was Jesse Him, and they both came from the football team. So Coach Cav recruited me from football to wrestling, and I played a pretty big role my first year. Got a lot of varsity reps because the varsity guy went down early. So that's kind of how I ended up there.
Interesting. And I saw here that you started up the PAL wrestling programs type. So what exactly is that? Is that in Stratford or that just in general?
Yeah, so no, it was in Stratford, and we were part of a team with the former women's assistant coach at Sacred Heart, this guy named Sean Sloat. He was coaching at Benell at the time, and he was like, hey, we want to get this PAL thing going. I want you guys involved in it. And pretty much, through the police department, you set up a youth wrestling program. It was super affordable. It was like $30 for like 3 months of wrestling. And it was held down at Stratford Jiu-Jitsu. And we were doing that for about a year. And then when it was time for the next youth season to start up, COVID happened. And when that happened, I ended up at Southside Wrestling Club. So since then, the PAL wrestling program has kind of liquidated. It doesn't really exist anymore. But we now have in Stratford, through the Stratford Rec Department, an offering for youth wrestling. And that's actually ran by one of my former wrestlers, James Duhancic, and a bunch of volunteers from the varsity wrestling team.
Interesting. Is it very successful in Stratford? Because I feel like back in the day for us, wrestling is like the farthest thing anyone ever thought of at Stratford High. Like, is it becoming a growing pandemic, I guess?
Right. Now they house about 30 to 40 kids, somewhere in that range. So it's got a pretty good, and those kids range in age from about 7 or 8 years old up until middle school. So there's a wide range of kids in that group, but 30, 40 kids in a town that traditionally hasn't offered wrestling is a pretty good start considering it just started in the spring. And so I know that James has plans to charter them as a former wrestling program and have them compete this winter season. So I'm sure that'll grow the interest and only make the program stronger.
Nice. So I saw you were assistant coach to Brandon. So what was that like working with your brother? Because I mean, I know Brandon from like middle school, high school. He didn't really look like the coaching type. So were you
Right.
guiding him in the journey, and you were more of the head coach, or you guys kind of how should I say this? Like fed off each other in a sense to get the wrestling program up? Because you guys did a pretty good job together in the 3 years that you guys were the coaches there.
Yeah. And I mean, we coached together a little longer than that. It goes back probably to 2017, 2018 season. And I was a volunteer coach at the time, and he was an assistant coach to a different coach, this guy by the name of Dan Gurman. And, working with him um, was an interesting dynamic because we did feed off each other. It wasn't really me guiding him. Brandon has a lot of really good coaching qualities, and he does pay a lot of attention to detail, and he is kind of thorough in like what he expects and puts it all out there. And he's kind of a guy that wears his emotions on his sleeve a little bit when it comes to coaching and the kids. And so there was definitely a give take, and there were times that I had things that I offered as suggestions to work on, and we would do it. And at the end of the day, where we failed in our coaching relationship didn't really have a whole lot to do with coaching. It was more with issues that we had with each other outside of coaching. And that is what it is. I think anytime that you um, spend a lot of time around somebody, there tends to be tension, and there just happened to be some tension in our personal relationship that made it hard to coach together. And and Brandon has other things in his life that he's sometimes not around for a long period of time, and so I just thought that I was suited to be a head coach and wanted to take the opportunity to be the head coach. And he said that he was still in full capacity of being able to be the head coach, and so I decided to pursue a different opportunity. Because at the end of the day, I did a lot for the Stratford Wrestling program, and I just wanted the opportunity to have my own program and get some recognition for the things that I was doing.
Now, out of the year that you guys were there, how many like all staters have you produced, or even not even have to be all staters? Just how many kids have you influenced at
Yeah,
Stratford High, or even at the Southwest Wrestling Club to either pursue wrestling in like college, or just have like get like better life experiences because of wrestling?
yeah. So I mean, I've been doing this. For me, wrestling is more than just 3 seasons. A lot of high school coaches, in particular, coach for 3 seasons a year, and that's about it. For me, wrestling, I coach 12 months a year. And so even after the high school season ends, I go straight into club and travel and freestyle and Greco. And so I've had an opportunity to be around a lot of kids. I'll start with like the Stratford program, and then I'll kind of build off of that. So with the Stratford program, when we took the Stratford program over, we had about 6 kids, 7 kids on the team. And, a varsity lineup in wrestling, for, anyone listening that doesn't know, is 14 wrestlers. So there's 14 weight classes. You compete in your respective weight class. And so we didn't even fill a full team. Most matches we would lose to the opposing team before we even wrestled the match because we didn't have enough weight classes. And so you give up points to the other team in dual meet. We were able to, build the team and get more athletes to participate. We usually hold between 25 and at our high 35 athletes a season from the 6 that we had. From that, last year we had two New England place winners. So kids that took top 6 in New England region for wrestling. And prior to that, Stratford had only had one New England place winner in the history of the school. And we did that in 5 years. So truly the first year that we took over the program was the year that the class that we just graduated. And in that class, we had two kids take top 6 in New England's. Those two kids also placed in the top 3 in New England's state opens rather. So the way wrestling works, that's different from other high school sports in Connecticut. Is other high school sports in Connecticut, you compete in your class state championships. So if you're a class L school, a class M school, a class S school, you compete in your respective state championship, and if you win, you're a state champ. And wrestling, the same is true, except afterwards you take the top 6 in each class and they go on to another tournament called the State Open, where you wrestle to see who like the number 1 overall kid is, the number 1 through 6 overall kids are. So we had athlete this year that won the State Open, and our other athlete that took top 6 in New England was a 3rd place finisher. In total, we were able to get 6 kids through to the Open this year. So we had 6 kids place in the top 6 of the Class L state championship and move on to the State Open. And then we also had 2 girls participate as well. So we've grown it into a program that is, I wouldn't say the best program, but they're respectable, right? I mean, anytime a team brings almost half their lineup to the State Open, it's an impressive feat. A lot of teams don't get more than 2 or 3 kids, if they even get one. And so we have a kid right now that's wrestling in college. We have another kid that goes to UConn that's thinking about participating in the club wrestling that they have there, which is actually a really respectable club program. They're usually in the top 10 in the club rankings for college wrestling. And then our other senior that we graduated, he is running the youth program, and he decided not to take the college route, but is still considering maybe wrestling on the senior level one day, which is, more like the World Wrestling Championships and the Olympics.
Oh, wow.
And that's the kid, real good athlete. His name's James. He won the State Open, New England place winner, and an All-American for us. Really good wrestler, good kid. So, whether he decides to pursue it or not, that I don't know. But for right now, he definitely does the youth wrestling stuff, and is still involved. Now, Southside, there's a lot more moving pieces because there's a lot of kids that go to Southside, and then there's a lot of coaches at Southside as well. We've grown into the largest wrestling club in Connecticut and the most successful by far. I play I don't always play a role in the kids' development that come out of Southside, right? So, but I do get to be around them and interact with them and travel with them and be in their corners when they compete. And so, in some way I am a part of their journey, but I have some kids that have gone to Southside, a handful that have gone on to wrestle in college. I have a wrestler that was at Southside Wrestling Club that I would practice with pretty routinely because he was a bigger kid, sometimes didn't have drilling partners. And so, I drill with him, practice with him. And so you play a role in the development of a lot of good wrestlers. I mean, out of Southside, we have a ton of D1 wrestlers right now, kids that wrestle Ivy League, kids that wrestle at schools like Virginia. So I would say that, overall in my year of wrestling, I come in contact with a lot of good wrestlers and play some type of role in their journey.
Now, can you tell the people that are watching or even going to be listening to it later, and That's My Sports, how difficult wrestling really is? Because my senior year, they wanted me to join the wrestling team so bad because I was 255 and a big kid, and I was doing track. I was like, I'm gonna just do track a senior year, like, fuck it, it's track. So Can you just tell people how difficult it is? It looked pretty intense. Like I don't even think I'd be able to do it, to be honest.
Yeah, it is very difficult. I would say it's probably the most difficult sport that you can do at the scholastic level, just because the amount of coordination that goes into wrestling. There's footwork involved in it, there's strength, there's speed, but then there's other things that make a successful wrestler that are intangible, such as motivation. A lot of wrestling is self-motivated because as much as wrestling is a team sport, it's an individual sport as well. And so a lot of who you rely on for your training is, your one partner, but yourself. And you have to kind of push yourself and motivate yourself and get extra workouts in and do all that. Wrestling is a sport that requires a high level of physical conditioning. And so sometimes in your day, you have to get multiple workouts in, going on extra runs, getting weightlifting sessions in, and then also going to practice. And then, wrestling's unique as well because it's one of the only sports that in order to get better at it, you have to actually do the sport. Like there's drills and things you could do, but live rounds and live reps are like really the only way you get better ultimately, right? Like sparring. And that's different in that, how many scrimmages do you play in football to prepare for a game? In wrestling, you might wrestle live every day or 3 days out of the week. Um, in addition to competition. Um, and live wrestling isn't always 100% trying to beat the crap out of your partner. Sometimes it's sparring, sometimes it's like you know kind of working through situations and progressing through progressing through different sequences. But um it's hard because you actually have to wrestle all the time. And so the thing that you do for the competition piece is also your practice regimen, right? And so it is grueling. It is hard on the body. A lot of times you are pushing through injury. There's a level of grit that goes into wrestling because it is a grappling sport. And so, you get lifted up and slammed onto the mat and, joints taken the wrong way and a lot of physical force being applied to you. There's all different types of techniques that are not comfortable and are meant to put you in a position where you have to choose between getting hurt or just pinning yourself and losing the match. And so, they can be tough on the body, but, again, there's a tenacity piece to that mentally that the athletes learn and that you have to have. And I think that's an important skill. But again, very hard because of all those pieces. There's so many different things that go into wrestling, and you have to be very disciplined in order to keep up with all of them. Think about maintaining endurance and then maintaining strength, and then also building the coordination while learning the technique, and then learning how to apply the technique. Learning how to feel where someone's weight is and balance and all of these things that go into it. Flexibility, um, pliability. There's a lot of different components to being a good wrestler, and I think that makes it very difficult to learn, and which is kind of uh, where we've had a lot of success is that we've taken kids that have never wrestled before and made them good wrestlers, um, and respectable wrestlers in 4 years. And a lot of times it takes kids their whole lives to become really good wrestlers because of what you have to learn and how you have to train in order to become successful. Um, so yeah, I would say it's probably one of the tougher things that you can do.
I'm glad I didn't do it then because I think Coach Cav would have been reaming into me every day. I would not have been able to do it.
The other thing that you have to realize about it is that you have to make a weight class, which means that you have to diet. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. Where you see people, you're out hanging out with your friends and you go to the movies and afterwards you go to the pizza place and everyone's eating pizza and you can't have pizza because you have to make weight.
Can you be a pound under, like MMA? If it's like if you're 245, if you're like 244.5 is fine, or you have to be specifically right there.
You can be under. You just can't be over.
Okay.
So if you're over by even a tenth of a pound, then you miss weight and you can only wrestle in the weight class above you.
What?
Yeah.
That's a little intense.
Well, not
Like,
only, but you like are qualified for the weight class above you. You can then bump up to the weight class above that. But
hmm, that's interesting. I did not know that.
yeah, you have to be either right on, like if your weight class is 125, you have to be 125.0 or under.
Dang, yeah, I couldn't do that either. So I'm good. I like pizza too
Well,
much.
I mean, at your weight, you would have been at 285, so you wouldn't have had to make weight anyway.
Oh, okay, good. So speaking of that, you wrestled the 285 at Sacred Heart. So Sacred Heart, one of like the most like not most predominant, but like a very good wrestling program. I don't know anything about wrestling. Like, is it kind of like college football where you have like the Arizona States, Minnesota, stuff like that, and is Sacred Heart in that type of Division 1, or are they still like one double A ish?
So it's different from football in that you wouldn't, or other sports where you wouldn't really have one double A and one A, but it's the same in that, you have a top 25 and, some of the big most of the big schools are in that top 25, right? Like you have like Iowa and Penn State's really the pinnacle. They're the best. And Iowa and all of these other teams. I mean, sometimes you get some teams in there like, Princeton has good wrestling or Rutgers has good wrestling or, so some of those teams that aren't necessarily powerhouses in like football and basketball are powerhouses in wrestling. But I mean, when I was Sacred Heart, from what I understand, at one point had a good wrestling program. And they used to be really good when I was there. I'm not going to lie. They weren't very good um, at all. But it was an opportunity to compete with Division 1 talent and to go to prestigious tournaments and wrestle amongst some of the best kids in the country. And so it was a really good opportunity, even though if you're looking at prestige, it wasn't the most prestigious wrestling school. But again, college wrestling is college wrestling. And I think that when you go out and you compete against high level guys, there's always an opportunity to learn. And that's what I wanted for myself, was just an opportunity to compete amongst the best guys in the country, because that's where I want to be, and you can't ever be on that level if you don't compete on that level, right?
Right. So with that, how many wins did you compel? Did you do all 4 years wrestling? I could only find just your name. Like Sacred Heart didn't want to give up anything,
Yeah.
like statistics wise.
Well, you also have to remember when it was. I mean, it was back in like 2008, 2012. Like, technology wasn't what it was. Smartphones weren't what they weren't. Record keeping wasn't as easy. Someone probably has it written down on paper somewhere or in an Excel file somewhere. Like, I don't really know. Keeping stats is much smarter and easier these days, right? But
Yeah.
but I was at Sacred Heart for 3.5 years. On my fourth year, I had to withdraw due to injury. And so I severely injured my spinal cord and my back. And I left the school and I stopped wrestling for
Was
a
that
little
when
bit.
you had that? Was that when you were rocking the cane for a
Yeah.
little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Oh,
did
okay.
have the cane, and that was a long road with that rehab. But yeah, at that time I had to stop. Uh, as far as how many wins, I mean, I couldn't really tell you. My first year, I redshirted, so I didn't compete my first year. I did some open tournaments, which, so the way redshirting works with wrestling is you get to practice, but when your team travels and competes, you don't travel with them. When they're dressed and on the bench, you're not dressed and on the bench with them. But in wrestling, you're allowed to compete in what's called open tournaments. And so open tournament just means like a university hosts it and invites a bunch of other universities, but anyone can really enter it. So you would go with the team, but you would enter unattached. So you weren't affiliated with the program, but you were just there and competing.
Hmm.
Um, so I did a couple open tournaments, and it was a rough transition. I didn't really win my freshman year. I might have won a match against like a JUCO kid, like a kid from a junior college. Um, and then my sophomore year, I traveled a little, competed a little. Um, yeah, again, like my events were very limited that year. My junior year was like the bulk of like my competition. And that year probably, I probably wrestled like 25 matches. And in those 25 matches, I was probably like 11 and 14 or somewhere around there. Um, so, again, not the greatest, but on that level and adjusting to it. And especially coming out of Connecticut wrestling at that time, Connecticut wasn't really known for having great wrestlers. And so I wasn't, fully acclimated to competing on that level yet. It took some time, but throughout the course of my development, I showed improvement, and I was able to compete and win matches on that level. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity, that I had doing that.
Yeah, I never knew that you were even right now. I guess I was looking you up as well, and you're on some YouTube for some matches that you do. You said the Greco-Roman style
Yep.
wrestling. So when did you start getting into that, or have you always done that? Because whenever I've seen you, you've either just you're just weightlifting a weightlift, or you're weightlifting for I guess like for football teams, but like like the state football teams and stuff like that. So have you like when was it when you finally were like, all right, let me just commit myself back to wrestling and just kind of leave the football behind, move on and going like that?
So it was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I did freestyle when I was younger. I never wrestled any Greco-Roman. Um, and I always liked freestyle. And when I found out that there were opportunities for me to compete, I really wanted to do it. And it was when I started coaching at Southside Wrestling Club. I mentioned before that I have a good friend that coaches there, coaches at GFA, this guy by the name of Jack Conroy. And Jack really pushed me into competing again. And so, I just trained, and it's obviously a big piece of what I do. So I'm always in a wrestling gym. So I was like, yeah, why not? Like I have partners, I have coaches, I have people to guide me. Like this seems like a good opportunity to do it. And so I started getting back into it probably again 3 or 4 years ago, competing, training, and it's kind of tapered off a little bit right now. Because I'm so busy with coaching, and that's consumed a lot of my life. But Greco was something that I started 3 or 4 years ago. I didn't do Greco as a kid. It was just something that Jack said that he thought I would be interested in, that I should try and I should do it. And he was like super adamant about me getting on the USA Wrestling National Circuit, which is just the series of ranking tournaments that happen in order to have the world team trials, right? So if you place at any of these ranking series tournaments, you qualify for the world team trials, and then you go to the world team trials, and you wrestle for an opportunity to make the world team.
Interesting.
And so he was super adamant about me getting on it, because I was still in shape, and I was actually in really good shape, and you know still strong and fast and interested. And so I did it, and I don't regret it at all. I love competing, and as long as my body allows me to, I'm going to continue to.
Nice. So obviously you're on here because you have a new job. Obviously leaving Stratford High, or sorry, Stratford University, because that I don't know what high school that is. Whenever I drive by it, but that is more. It looks like a college more than a high school. So with Staples High, obviously now you're the wrestling coach of Staples High. So did you find them, or did they find you? And how did that process work that you picked Staples High out of maybe if you've had more offers?
So Staples, really the way that I came into Staples is, Staples had their coach that was there for a while, and he retired, and they opened it up. Now, there's a lot of Staples families that are involved in Southside Wrestling Club, and so when the position opened up, they kind of were talking to the guys at Southside, and the guys at Southside were like, "Hey, we have the perfect guy for you," and they pushed me towards applying for the job and pursuing it. And I'm super grateful that they did, because I think it's going to be a good experience and a good fit um, between Staples and I. I think that the reason that I Pick Staples was it was an opportunity to work in a community that has a good support group and a good feel. Like a big thing for me at Stratford was that we built this community of like family of people that supported each other and supported each other's growth, and it feels like that is already there in Westport. Um, in the short time that I've been announced as the head coach, I felt it myself, and so I can only imagine that as this season goes on, it's only going to intensify. But I think the culture there is something that attracted me. Staples has always had a good athletics program. I think in the history of the school, across all their sports, they have about 143 state championships. So, significant amount of state titles. And, I think that for that, um, it seemed like a good fit. They also have a youth program in place, so a good feeder program. And so I thought of it as an opportunity to really build it into something that was a powerhouse in the state.
Do you feel any pressure because of what you literally just said, that they have a hundred? It's pretty much like a successful school in the sense of sports. Like, do you feel pressure in the sense of I need to make sure this wrestling program's great, or they can just can me in like a year?
I don't think it's like that with them. I don't get that sense from the athletic director there, and he's a really good guy. And also from talking to the other coaches there, it doesn't seem like that's the case. Their wrestling program has not won states in a very long time, mostly because they compete against Danbury, and Danbury's been a powerhouse in the state for a long time. Danbury's in the double L, so it makes it hard for them to win a state championship because they're competing against the team that typically has been the best. And there's a lot of other good schools in the FCX and the double Ls, so I don't feel an enormous amount of pressure because it's not like I'm pressured to maintain something that's already the top. You know what I mean? I'm building,
Yeah.
and so I kind of have the freedom to make this my thing, right? I have kind of the freedom to build my culture and to, make Staples a place that is respected on the state for wrestling. I don't think that there's any pressure from, the community or the AD to go out and win states the first year or like be, this powerhouse off rip. I think they know it's going to take some time. I think they know that there just needs to be someone who's really committed to building it and to helping the youth program continue to grow and to helping these high school kids um, learn high level wrestling and to set standards and expectations for them and to help them succeed on bigger more national platforms. And so I think that they understand that it takes time to do that. And so I don't really feel a ton of pressure at all. That doesn't mean that I don't want to do a good job because I'm a competitive person myself, and so like I like to win. And so I would say that there's probably more pressure on myself to be my best self than there is like external pressure from people to like have this big successful season and outing. I think again, it's just the standard that I hold myself to of at, being excellent at what I do, and um, I think that again that it's a good fit for Staples because the culture that exists within the community already.
Now, do you already walking in? Do you have kids that are like all staters? Like you don't have 7 or 8 kids, right? Like you have a good rapport coming back, or are you on that recruiting trail in the school? Like, hey, do you want to do wrestling? It's like going up against random kids.
I mean, I'm definitely going to recruit because I think that, anytime you recruit, you're going to grow interest in the sport and you might get prospects that develop into some of your best kids that never really had an interest in wrestling. And so recruiting is always an important element, even if you have a good foundation coming back. We do have a lot of experienced wrestlers that'll be returning to the team. But as far as kids that are, state open qualifiers, there's only one athlete that's a returning state open qualifier. So it's not like I'm walking into a situation where there's 6 or 7 state open qualifiers. That doesn't mean that that's not going to change, but as it is right now. They're an experienced group that just needs the right leadership in order to take the next step.
Okay. Probably last question of the day. Collusion in fantasy football. Is this real? Did Brandy Boy he try to disrupt the league because he has too much on that we were about to find out?
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
the league is gone once you left. You created like an exodus because now it's not there anymore. So I guess Brandy Boy got exposed.
everyone left.
Pretty much a good amount. We couldn't get enough people, so it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, I was the glue, but um, there was definitely a fair amount of collusion in fantasy football. I know firsthand a lot of it that went on, especially between Brandon and Ray. Um, you know, the whole move to remove me as the commissioner in itself was collusion, so that Brandon could try to tamper with the draft picks and the settings and move things into more his favor. And so it is what it is. I mean, ultimately, the reason I didn't come back to fantasy football wasn't because of his collusion, because hi in his own collusion, he sinks his own ship because he's always in the bottom of the league anyway.
Yes.
So karma is a real thing. But the reason that I stopped is when I got back into wrestling and I got back into competing and, I got into coaching, I just really became obsessed with it. And a lot of my free time now is watching wrestling technique and watching interviews and watching videos and studying the best guys in the world, or getting my own personal training in, or things of that sort. And so it kind of took away like my time for football. I mean, there was a time where I was obsessed with football, and that's all I wanted to do was watch football. And I had every app possible to do it. And Sunday from 1 o'clock to 11 midnight, I was glued to that TV watching football. I knew all the stats and everything. And now that's more what I do with wrestling. And so my focus just shifted. And I wasn't gonna just weigh the league down and be dead weight like Aunt Selza. so so I don't really watch football. I don't really know as many people. Like, I would be sitting there picking old heads that like don't do anything anymore. You know what I mean?
Oh wow, I'm disappointed in you, Jordan. Very
Like,
disappointed.
I would be sitting there drafting Mike Evans still. Like,
Oh my god, yeah.
so it's like the league was better off without me.
I guess it's good that you haven't watched the Giants at all because it's getting abysmal.
I
It's
mean,
getting
I
worse.
see it, but like the thing is that the last time I watched football, I remember saying Danny Dimes is dookie and it should be gone. Like, we wasted a draft pick. We just need to accept that we messed up and move on and get someone else and replace him. And everybody fought me on it and was like, no, he's good. He needs a line. He needs this. He needs that. How many opportunities are you going to give this dude and continue to make excuses for him before you realize that he's just fucking trash? Sorry.
No, you're good. We
I
we
kept
curse
it
on this
clean.
show. It's
I
all
kept
good.
I kept it clean all episode, which is like
Ah, you're good. No,
really hard
I
to
should have
do.
told you before we start. Yeah, you could curse. It's funny because I'm on a Giants podcast with my guy Chris, CPNY Sports, and I have egg on my face because I was like, the biggest, he needs to go. Like, we don't need him. Like, he's not good. And then this year I was like, you know what? He had a good year, 15-5, won a playoff game. I gave my support, and now I got egg on my face. So
Yeah.
it is, but actually, I have one more question. Who has been I mean, if you want to pick favorites, it's cool. If you want to be secretive, I understand. Have you had a wrestler either on the high school level or even in your wrestling club that is like your favorite in the sense of like they have all the intangibles, like they come in to work every day, well, not work, but they come in to wrestle every day. Like they just have that motor and that fire. You just know they're going to be great because the only one I know of, and I said before the show, was Nico Provo. I feel like
Yeah.
he's a standard for Connecticut because of what he's doing at Stanford.
And I really like watching Nico wrestle and watching Nico work. Nico's work ethic is unmatched. It's unrivaled. Nico works so hard, and I have a ton of respect for Nico. You know, to remove all the politics of it, and this is probably the truth anyway, the kid that I have enjoyed watching the most and being around and being a part of their journey is this kid named Chris Murphy. And he was a wrestler at Guilford High School. And he then went on to wrestle at GFA, and he now wrestles for Army at West Point.
Oh, wow.
Chris was a wrestler that, had a season where he went 0-2 at the Class M state tournament. So not even the tournament of the best wrestlers, doesn't win a match. And this kid literally dedicated his whole entire life to just, working out and getting better at wrestling, and showed up every day and was consistent and put a ton of effort in and did private lessons and wrestled at every event and just was super tough and super gritty and developed into one of the best wrestlers in the country. I think he was a 2-time All-American in high school for folk style wrestling. Like I said, wrestles Division I at Army now. And I think, watching his journey and what he did motivates me. Definitely a kid that, I would say is probably the best role model that you could have, just in terms of how he works and applies himself and kind of the standard that he set for himself. And, going from being a kid that couldn't place at a state tournament to winning a New England title and winning, the state championship and being a 2-time All-American, the amount of work that takes and requires is, you couldn't even begin to imagine it if, I started to explain it. So, I mean, it was just a real honor to watch him do that and to corner him. And, one of his All-American runs, I cornered him for the whole tournament. And, I'm just grateful for, for meeting that kid. He's a great kid off the mat, too. I have a ton of good conversations with him. Really good heart, and just all around good person. So I really enjoyed being around Chris. I hope he's doing well up at West Point.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And listen, if you have any wrestler that you want me to interview to come on, I would appreciate it, just because I feel like it's a very underrated sport in the sense of everybody loves MMA or they love the WWE, but they won't watch like on the mat wrestling. And if there's any young wrestlers or people that are watching that want their kids or anyone they know, Southside Wrestling Club at 3404 Fairfield Ave in Bridgeport, they got 5 stars on here, folks. Obviously they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
We have a ton of All-Americans, and when we send our Connecticut national team out to the nationals every year, we have over 2/3 of the wrestlers that are participating in that tournament and on that trip and on that team. So we do a really good job. We have a really high commitment to our athletes, and we always do right by them. So for anyone that ever wants to try it out, our doors are always open. We accept everybody. All you need is a pair of wrestling shoes, and even if you don't have that, we have bins full of them. So.
Oh, okay. And obviously, hopefully your Staples career stays for long. Hopefully you have a great season. I am the host with the most, Aaron Cass, here with the new Staples Wrestling head coach, Jordan Miron, obviously from Stratford. In love memory, along with Marky DeRusso, number 12. This has been That's My Sports. We'll see you when you see you. Peace.
Tie this game at 60.